Since the creation of the Upper Cook Inlet Task Force in October of 2012, Eastside SetNetters have been working on a proposal that answers to the task force mission of identifying a set of recommended adjustments to the Kenai Lake Run Management Plan. This proposal, as stated in the task force mission statement, will result in the best mix of in-river and gillnet fishing opportunities, all while providing the best means of attaining escapement goals. These adjustments are only applicable in times of low Chinook abundance. This presentation will explore the following topics in regards to the proposal. First, we'll look at the diversity among the SetNet beaches and the implications and importance of that diversity. Then we will define the current status of the Kenai Chinook in accordance to the Department's criteria of conservation. Next, we will explore the conflict in managing for the health of both the sockeye and Chinook runs, and how to best achieve a balanced management plan. Finally, proposed changes to the management plan will be explained. The diversity of Eastside SetNet beaches cannot be underestimated. This diversity is important to note when proposed changes to the management plan are being considered. The Eastside SetNet locations span a distance of 100 miles, from East Fordlands down to Ninilchik. Within this span are two of the main rivers of the Upper Cook Inlet, the Kasilof and Kenai rivers. The SetNet locations start in the north with the East Fordlands, followed by Salamantoff. Further south, you will find the K Beach sites, which have been divided into North K Beach and South K Beach by the Blanchard Line. South of the Kasilof River are the Coho and Ninilchik beaches, respectively. The Eastside SetNet seasons differ depending on the location of the beach, but on average, the fishing season is about 5 to 7 weeks. The beaches north of the Blanchard Line have a later start date of July 8th, in order to allow late-run kings to enter the river. The Eastside SetNet fishery has 2 regular 12-hour periods per week, plus additional hours based on sockeye abundance. There is a tidal swing of 25 feet amongst all the different beaches, where the current moves at 6 knots. In addition, some beaches have limited access at high tide, while other beaches go completely dry at low tide. South of the Kenai River, the SetNet locations extend from the beach to 1.5 nautical miles, whereas the beaches north of the Kenai River set their nets from the beach outwards of 1 nautical mile. In all, there are 448 permits that fish the 6 beaches of the east side. After the 2012 season, many fishermen, business owners, and community members are left wondering about the current status of the Kenai King. In the following slides, we will look at the Kenai King's current status in accordance to the Alaska Departments of Fish and Game's criteria for conservation concern. Before looking at conservation concerns, one should be familiar with the goals used to manage the Kenai River Chinook. The first is Sustainable Escapement Goal, or SEG. This is an estimate based on historical performance and other factors. SEG is meant to conserve a stock over a 5 to 10 year period. It is used in situations where biological escapement goal cannot be estimated because there is no stock-specific catch information. The Sustainable Escapement Goal is the primary management objective for escapement. SEG is used unless an optimal escapement goal or in-river goal has been adopted by the Board of Fish. SEG is developed by Fish and Game using biological data. Then there is the Optimal Escapement Goal, or OEG. This goal allows for sustainable runs based on biological needs of the stock and ensures healthy returns for all user groups. The OEG is a management objective that considers biological and allocative factors. Unlike the SEG, the OEG is set by the Board of Fish. Finally is the Sustained Escapement Threshold, or SET. This is a limit of escapement. Salmon stocks that are not able to sustain above this level are considered jeopardized. SET is set lower than the Sustainable Escapement Goal, or SEG. The SET is established by the department in consultation with the board. In essence, the SET is the true definition of a conservation concern. In the Upper Cook Inlet, both Chinook and sockeye salmon are typically managed for the SEG and OEG. Right now, in the Upper Cook Inlet fisheries, there are absolutely no established SETs. The 3 levels of concern defined by the department are yield concern, management concern, and conservation concern, all of which refer to the term chronic inability, which is an inability to meet escapement goals over a 4 to 5 year period, despite the use of specific management measures. The lowest level of concern is a yield concern, which results from the chronic inability to maintain yields or harvestable surplus above escapement needs, whereas the management concern results from a chronic inability to maintain escapements within the bounds of the biological escapement goal, the sustainable escapement goal, or the optimum escapement goal. Finally comes the conservation concern, which results from a chronic inability to maintain escapement above a sustainable escapement threshold. This figure, taken from an Alaska Department of Fish and Game presentation, is a visual representation of what a conservation concern would look like. First note the gray bar. This represents the average yield. Then the yellow bars represent a yield concern, as the escapement falls above the goal during the 4 to 5 consecutive years. Then if you look to the right at the green bars, you will see that for 5 years, the escapement has fallen consistently below the goal, causing a management concern. Lastly, you will see the red bars that represent the most severe of concerns, the conservation concern, as the run fails to meet the SET for multiple years. In January of 2013, the Alaska Department of Fish and Game established new escapement goals for the Lake Kenai King Run. The new goal is a lower goal of 15,000, with an upper goal of 30,000. As this graph shows, the goal has been met and even exceeded for the past 26 years. In many of the years, there was even harvestable surplus well above the upper goal that were not harvested. It is clear that there is no conservation concern for the Lake Kenai King Run. The most accurate way to assess the productivity of an adult Chinook salmon is to look at the brood year. The term brood simply means spawning. So if we look at the spawning year, we can correlate those numbers with the number of Chinook returning to the river. According to the Alaska Department of Fish and Game's data, the largest brood year of 130,000 in 1999 came from the spawning escapement of 29,600. In contrast, the lowest return of 22,510 in 2004 came from the spawning escapement of 63,950. From this brood year data, we can conclude there is no evidence that there is a catastrophic decline of Kenai Chinook. Even with recent declines in total run, there is still harvestable surplus. Among all user groups, the average annual exploitation rate of the Lake Kenai King Run is 39%, 13% of which is exploited by the Eastside Setnet fishery. The remaining 26% is split among personal use, subsistence, drift gillnet, and sport fishermen. The majority of the 26% is taken by the sport fish industry. So even if the Eastside Setnetters were out of the water for the whole season, that means the in-river return would only increase by 13%. In the following slides, we will explore the management conflict that exists between trying to simultaneously manage the Upper Creek Inlet fisheries for both Chinook and sockeye runs. We will examine the opportunities to achieve a proper balance within this conflict. What is the problem today? Currently, there is a management conflict between the sockeye and Chinook management plans, because both plans direct the Alaska Department of Fish and Game to meet escapement goals for sustained yield management. In such a conflict lies the fact that there are often times when the optimum escapement goal for both the Chinook and the sockeye runs cannot be met, and that is why the trade-off discussion must be carefully considered. One must ask themselves this question: which do more Alaskan residents benefit from, the harvestable surplus of Chinook or the harvestable surplus of sockeye? Consider the following. The Chinook run benefits the sport fishing industry, both guides and private anglers, and of course the local businesses associated with the sport and tourism industry. Whereas the beneficiaries of the sockeye fishery include 100,000 Alaskan residents who fish for sockeye in the personal use fishery, 13 native tribes who harvest sockeye in the subsistence fishery. Then there is the commercial fishery, where 1,305 permits are held and 5,000 jobs are created. Under the umbrella of that commercial fishery are 19 major processors and buyers. There are also numerous sport fishermen, both guides and private anglers, who fish for sockeye. And of course, there are all the local businesses that depend on the business of the commercial fishermen and tourists associated with the sockeye fishery. In conclusion, the trade-off is clear. far more Alaskan residents benefit from a healthy sockeye run than that of a Chinook run. Since so many Alaskan residents benefit from the future yields of sockeye, what does this mean in regards to management decisions? It means that when management decisions for the Upper Cook Inlet fishery are made solely for the late Chinook run, the average future yields of sockeye are reduced. Because when sockeye escapements exceed their upper level escapements above the SEG, their yield will be diminished. Put simply, when numbers go above the sustainable goal, the future returns will be poor. The graph shown here is using actual measured values from Fish and Game, and it shows that when spawners climb above 800,000, fish yields begin to decrease. So returning to our original point of finding a balance in the managing of both sockeye and Chinook, the real question is, what yield do we want and how can we achieve balance? This presentation will conclude with proposed changes to the Lake Kenai River Chinook Salmon Management Plan. The proposed changes to the existing management plan are displayed below in bold. As a housekeeping measure, the biological escapement goal is changed to a sustainable escapement goal, and the numbers of 15,000 to 30,000 reflect the department's recommendations for the late-run Chinook salmon. As in the previous slide, the changes are noted below in bold. In Article 3, it is proposed to add the average median date range of the Kenai Chinook run strength, so the clause would read, if the projected in-river return is less than 15,000 king salmon, as projected between the date range of July 15th to July 20th, the department shall. Article A. In lieu of closing the sport fishery, it is proposed that the sport fishery is restricted to no bait and/or catch and release. No river closure of in-river sport fishery is required unless D below is implemented. B. There are no proposed changes to Article B. It will read, close the commercial drift gillnet fishery in the Central District within 1 mile of the Kenai Peninsula shoreline, north of the Kenai River, and within 1.5 miles of the Kenai Peninsula shoreline, south of the Kenai River. C. The proposed changes to C are to add the criteria that would help to protect the future yields of sockeye, as earlier explained in the trade-off discussion. The clause will read, restrict the commercial set gillnet fishery in the upper subdistrict of the Central District unless there is harvestable surplus of the Kenai and/or Kasilof River sockeye salmon, at which time the SEG will become an OEG of 11,000 to 15,000. It is proposed to add the clauses D through G under Article 3. They will read D. If it is projected that the optimum escapement goal of 11,000 will not be met, then the upper subdistrict setnet fishery and late-run Chinook salmon sport fisheries will close until August 1st. E. If C above is implemented, the department shall suspend provisions in other management plans relative to time and area restrictions related to the upper subdistrict setnet fishery. F. If C above is implemented, the department shall release late-run Chinook salmon escapement on a daily basis. If the new projection is greater than the 15,000 sustainable escapement goal, the restriction shall end. G. Close the personal use fishery to the retention of Chinook salmon. In conclusion, this proposal will, as the task force mission states, result in the best mix of in-river and upper subdistrict set gillnet fishing opportunity, while providing the best means of attaining the escapement goal for the Kenai River late-run Chinook salmon. This is applicable for during times of low king salmon abundance. Handouts to this presentation are available, or it can be viewed again online. We would now like to open this discussion up to questions or comments. Thank you for listening.